So how long have you been sober?
Phew. It's 30 years or something like that now. Do you want to hear a couple of funny stories?
Yes, please. I'd love them. I'm going to sit
Right.
back.
Well, one day I was going down the pub to be there at 11 o'clock in the morning to have a drink, right? And I thought to myself, and I was bad, you know, I hadn't been eating, I had the DTs all the time. And I'm walking down kind of a main road to get to the, it's not where I live now, it was a bit, I used to live somewhere else, but in the same area. So I'm walking down there and I thought, this is crazy, I can't keep doing this every day. I can't keep doing this every day without eating. What are you going to do, Glenn? And I'm all jittery, you know, like, So I went into a little kind of, I suppose you call it a bodega or something like that, and bought a packet of crisps, we call them, potato chips, right? And I started eating them, and there's kind of buses going down the road loud, and then there was a dust cart, you know, a garbage truck going past, banging the bins around, and I go, I started eating this crisp, and I dropped them. I picked them up, and I dropped them again, and I picked them up, and I sat on a wall, and by now, half the crisps that I've ever been eating have fallen out. And inside there's some writing. And I thought, what's that saying? And I looked, do you know what it said inside the packet of crisps? And I've still got the packet somewhere. It said Glen Matlock.
Come on.
No, really? And I'm going, whoa, this is kind of weird here. No. And I dropped the packet again and picked it up. But on the outside, it was a pop quiz. Who was the original bass player of the Pistols Bassist? Now, I was really annoyed because I could have had a heart attack and nobody had asked me, right? I'm going to sue them and I can get more beer out of it, you know. And all that. I stopped drinking not much after that. I wanted to, but it was a sign, you know. That's
amazing.
So,
that is amazing.
But I think somebody was sending me something, even if it was the guy who owned a savoury snack company. There was a bar around my way that had bands playing. There's lots of musicians who live around this way who would just play for the hell of it, you know. And I come out at 4 o'clock in the morning, sun's beginning to come up, a bit too far to stagger home, and there's a canal there, and there's a little bridge that goes over it.
Uh-oh.
And well, no, I didn't go in the canal. There was a car, and I thought, oh great, a minicab. Got in the car, weren't a minicab, it was a police car. And I went, hello, Glenn. And they took me, but not home. They took me to the police station. It was always daft things like that, but it was, you know, it wasn't heavy or anything, and I didn't end up in Rikers, but it was kind of funny, but it was just stupid.
You must have been a working musician, you know, by that point, because you were quite young, right, when you started playing. How did the drinking affect your music?
I think I always played all right, really, you know.
Then how did getting sober affect your music?
Don't know, perhaps it came a little bit more, I was going to say introverted. I don't think that's the case. I think I just play the way I've always played, really. And in fact, maybe now it's my main kind of release. But perhaps I put a bit more into it. But even back then, apart from once when I fell asleep against a pole in the middle of a set, nobody ever really complained. In fact, there's a guy called John Perry, who was in that band, The Only Ones. We did some side project. And he said to this girl Patty Paladin, used to knock around with Johnny Thunders, made a fantastic album with them called Copycats. But we did some dates in France and Spain, and he said to her, I can't believe Glenn, he plays just as good when he's totally drunk as when he's totally sober. So,
okay.
Which is a bit like, again, Ronnie Wood. I love that quote of Keith Richards talking about Ronnie Wood. I've known him totally out of it and totally sober, and there's no difference. So maybe that was like that with my bass playing. I don't know.
When you're in the middle of the music scene like that, everyone knows who you are. You've had all this success. There's been ups and downs. You're in it, right? You were in it, in that world. So it's hard to change midstream like that, right? You didn't change careers. You didn't move. You didn't go under a rock. You just stopped drinking in place. You sheltered in place. Was that incredibly challenging?
Well, it wasn't easy, but do you know what? You're not really supposed to mention things, but he's kind of proud of it all. it's about 12 years ago now. And I was fortunate I got to play with a version of my all-time favourite band, which is the Faces.
Ah,
Right? Rod Stewart didn't do it, sadly, but an English guy called Mick Hucknall did, but it was Ronnie Wood, Kenny Jones and Ian McLagan. Anyway, the first day Ronnie didn't turn up, and he'd been in all the papers for running around with this Russian girl and stuff, and they didn't know what was going on. It was kind of weird, and they got annoyed, Kenny and Ian McLagan, and it was out in the countryside, like a real rock star's mansion, and we was going to rehearse in this Tudor barn that had been disassembled and moved there. I mean, it was like real that kind of thing. And the next day, Ronnie turned up, and he was there before me, and I walked in, and he came running up to me. He said, Glen, I hear you're on the wagon. I said, yeah. And he said, me too. And I said, good for you. You know, how long you done? He said, a week. And he had his little yellow keyring thing. And he said, how long you done? And back then, it was about 22 years. I said, 22 years. And he went, how did you do that? And I just looked him in the eye, and you're going to have to excuse my Anglo-Saxon, but I said, Ron, I was fed up with making a cunt of myself. And he was like, and that was it, you know, and he kind of got it. And that's basically what I was fed up making a fool of myself, you know.
You're well known for this, crazy rock and roll lifestyle, punk rock. Has anybody ever tried to challenge your sobriety? Like, come on, man, you're not really. Just have one. Because they want to be the one that got Glen Matlock to drink?
Not really. I think most people have been a bit cool. People say, oh, you're a bit boring these days. And I go, well, do you know what? Sitting here watching you get drunk is kind of pretty boring as well, so I'm off.
Pretty boring, yeah.
I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
You know.
I
say the thing is, when people are drunk, they repeat themselves. And do you know what they do then? They repeat themselves. And the other thing is, they repeat themselves, you know. And it's like, yeah.
I know. I thought I was so charming when I was drinking, and it turns out it couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I did have a laugh, though. The guy, the other pub where I ended up working in for a bit, the guy who ran it, and he come in all like, oh, hello, Glenn. He said, I went to see a movie last night, and you was in it. I said, what movie? I wasn't in a movie. I said, what's it called? He said, Arthur.
Oh, no. Nobody wants to hear that. Arthur or Arthur 2 on the rocks?
No, it's Arthur. It's the first one, you know.
That's awful. That's awful.
That's what I was like, a nitwit, you know.